Good. So let's actually get started on the weekly or bi-weekly special interest group call. So welcome everybody. This is SharePoint Patterns and Practices special interest group for kind of a general SharePoint development, and we have two different special interest groups going kind of a bi-weekly both, which means that every single week on Thursday at 7 a.m. Pacific time, or whatever that means in your schedule, 4 p.m. Central Europe, 3 p.m. GMT. We have this PnP community call, and this is the special interest group call where we can have a more open audio discussions and everything else, and we should have always time for Q&A, and we're trying to get some time for the Q&A in every single week. Hopefully we'll have some time for today as well. Now, today I just added a new additional demo which is not on the agenda, and I forgot to update apparently the date on this agenda slide. But anyway, today's key point is to have some random discussions on miscellaneous announcements, a few things, and I'm going to do an ad hoc demo there as well, related on something which we pushed out in our documentation side earlier this week. On probably one of the interesting things for if you are working in SharePoint framework or SharePoint adding models is the new upcoming Alm APIs. So this is a preview on that capability. It's not yet available for you to use, but I'm going to walk through how it actually works and what are the APIs which are available, what you can do with them with the live demo and all of that. But like mentioned, it's not yet available even in dev preview, so you can't actually use them yet. We're still polishing the final things on the server side to making sure that everything is working right. And then after that, Paolo is going to do most likely a slightly longer demo on GDPR Activity Hub, and this is a reference solution for SharePoint Online built on top of the GDPR business case. It is an awesome solution, reference solution which demonstrates automated deployment, end-to-end scenarios, SharePoint Online together with SharePoint Framework as well. Now, technically, this is not the SharePoint Framework special interest group, but obviously more and more in the future, these things are aligning between each other. For example, the Alm APIs, the reason why we wanted to cover that in here is that this is more around the provisioning, more around the automation. Then on the SharePoint Framework special interest group, we'll concentrate more on the JavaScript development and TypeScript and Angular and React and all of that. Now, that hopefully does make sense. Please remember to mute yourself so we don't actually get too much additional background noise during the demos, and hopefully we'll have time for the Q&A today, like mentioned. I do apologize, I'm suffering from a flu. So my voice and my energy levels are not necessarily in this typical day-to-day level, which they typically are, but I'll manage. That should be fine. Good. So let's actually get on going on the topics. One thing what I wanted to remember, we've been promoting this quite a few times now already. AKMS SB Dev Docs is the new location for all of the SharePoint developer documentation. So MSDN is going to be shut down. Word of a warning, don't freak out, it's all good. We basically will shut down MSDN, and we will replace that with the docs.microsoft.com/SharePoint/dev in a similar way as all of the Azure documentation is in the docs.microsoft.com platform. The reason for this one is simply because MSDN is completely outdated. And we can't really fix that. So now Microsoft, in the end, in the company level, is pushing the docs.microsoft.com, and all of the organizations, all of the products are meant to be jump on board on that one. So pretty soon, all of the PnP, specific PnP, MSDN documents will be merged here as well. The PnP PowerShell stuff will be there, and all of that stuff will be in a single location. So you can easily find everything what's relevant for you from a single URL, which hopefully will help because in the past we've been having way too many locations to find what's relevant for you. Now, on these random announcement things, I think I had I'm missing a picture from there, but that's fine. I'm going to show that in a second. So on the random announcement sections, I wanted to kind of, this was not in the agenda, but 5 minutes or 10 minutes before the call, I realized that, interesting, we did actually went live with this documentation already, so why wouldn't we actually quickly go through what does it mean? And there was an interesting discussion yesterday with Mark Mark and Twitter around the positioning of this column formatting capability. So in Ignite a few weeks back, we announced column formatting capability, which will give you the opportunity to override or define styles based on the column values. And what that one will give you is a simple UI level configuration options on a specific column. This one will not replace anything in the SharePoint framework. This is not a replacement for SharePoint Framework Field Customizer. This is a more kind of a citizen developer capability, and you are actually setting that configuration to a single instance which is a column within a list. So you're not actually setting this column formatting to a field as such in the site column level. And you cannot also write any actual script by using this column formatting capability. So if you're looking into having more complex scenarios, SharePoint Framework is the right way to do. For UI level, let's say simple presentation, the column formatting does give you nice opportunities as well. This is coming soon to developer preview, so soon meaning within weeks rather than months right now. It is now being tested. The documentation is out in the SharePoint Dev Docs underneath the declarative customizations, if I remember correctly. It is an own JSON format. Somebody actually put it quite nicely in the Twitter yesterday in the Twitter discussions that, this looks like a new camel. Like we used to have camel-based configurations in SharePoint back in the times. Well, there's a lot of old school SharePoint people in this call as well, so you've actually gone through that as well. But the quick URL for actual documentation is AKMS SB doc column formatting. And we actually have a simplistic tool to help you to test this thing as well, which is in the http columnformatting.sharepointpnp.com. Now, let me actually quickly, before we go to the Alm APIs, which was one of the main topics of the day, I just wanted to quickly run through what does this actually mean in practice as well, because now that the documentation is out, you can actually see how things are working. So let me share my screen, and somebody needs to then confirm whenever the screen sharing is working, and it's that screen. So let me slightly adjust the volume. Good comment from Ralph. Now, okay, Chris got it. That means that probably the rest of the world got it as well. So, so this is let's say a simplistic list, and what we want to do is that we want to present these field values in a slightly differently based on the value what we're having here. I'm going to use directly the column formatting SharePoint.com URL. So let me actually get that one in here. So if you go to column formatting SharePoint you land on this one. We're still working on polishing the experience and making sure that it's the right text and links and everything else. But in here, if we, for example, from this drop-down, select the severity template, we'll get a definition which will look something like following. And we're able to test things here as well. So I can actually go and change the behavior and the definition. So say that that's when it's less than 10 or 20, and then that's going to actually use a certain style. When that's actually happening, when it's something else, it's going to use a separate style and all of that. So you can use this tool to test things out. You can always refresh and see how it actually looks on the other side. Right now, because I'm doing a relatively quick test demo to walk through what does it mean, I'm going to copy that one. I'm going to move back on the site. And key point here to notice that I'm actually doing a drop down on the existing column. So I'm actually configuring as an end user existing column settings, and format this column. Right now, there's no UIs, there's no nothing, there's no designers to make these things happen. There might be something in the future, there might not be something in the future. I can't say any details on that. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to paste in that JSON plump, which is essentially the definition how the thing should be rendered. Clicking save, and voila, we can see that the rendering of the column has been completely changed. And there's some audio, yeah, good. At least majority of people are seeing what I'm sharing, which is good. The same thing for example, for the deadline. So I'm going to actually use the existing template from here. Let's do date severity. This one is checking. Let's see if the current field is less than now. We have a different rendering. If it's bigger than now, we have a different rendering format. And I'm going to actually copy that one. And I'm going to get back on my field, modify that column settings, format this column, pasting the JSON, click save, and voila. We can actually see that every single time the date is in the future, it is actually drawing that in a different format. That's essentially what it means. So a simple way of formatting the rendering. Now, the key points here to remember, like I mentioned, so there's no scripting support, there's no action support that you would click something and JavaScript would be executed. There's no support, that kind of support within this one. And probably there never will be, because the problem of having that level of a scripting injection support in the UIs is actually the scripting injection, because that will then give the end users and editors the way to accidentally or intentionally cause a script injection attacks, and that's something what we want to avoid in the future. Good. Yes, we would not want that. So, and that's really the reason why we are heading to the more and more to the SharePoint frameworks direction, which is structural way, and all of your solutions are getting deployed in a way that they're getting deployed through the app catalog, and that's really the key point. Good. Is it possible provision formatting with the list in the future? That is actually possible. Question from Matti. So already right now, I think it was actually, I can double check that right away. CSOM update March 27th. Online. And that is actually the one. On March 2017, CSOM update, version 6.3.2.3. I probably remember this. Is it formatting? Format render, but I'm pretty sure that it's in this March as well. Nope. No. It's not in, okay, it's not in March. I think it was then in April. Anyway, we do have a property in CSOM, which you can already set and save to the field. So you can actually programmatically do what I'm doing here manually. The same applies obviously to REST as well. So you can programmatically apply the setting in REST. If you're using PnP provisioning, that actually already supports this field. Whenever the capability will be enabled within your tenant, this will be supported there as well. Good. The property has been there since March, yes, or March or April. I can't remember which one is it. It's in one of those CSOM updates which I wrote at some point, but or released at some point. But you can programmatically set that. It doesn't. If you now do that programmatically today within your tenant, it doesn't work, because the functionality has not been enabled within the production or in the developer tenant. So this is a preview on something what is coming in future. If you're wondering, hey, but how does that work? Well, typically, if you're not super aware how we release our stuff, actually many of the new upcoming capabilities are already deployed within your tenant. It's just a matter for us to enable the capability whenever the documentation and all of the final testing has been completed. And that gives us the opportunity to actually, in an isolated way, enable the capability in the subset of tenants to make sure that everything is fine in production, and then we can go worldwide, or start with the dev preview, then go to the first release, and then go worldwide, slightly depending on the capability. Good. That was a quick kind of a look on the column formatting. If we quickly on the topic, docs.microsoft.com and SharePoint. Yes. Docs.microsoft.com / SharePoint will land on this selection, which is a slightly weird selection, and I've already provided the feedback to our technical writer, because the question seems to be that, are you a server or are you a developer? Well, in this call, we're probably developers, not servers. But anyway, the developer content is in here. We'll fix the wording on that one. And in the SharePoint development, if we extend declarative customization, there's column formatting documentation, where the first thing here is that it's not in production. But this is already explaining how it actually works. You saw some of the demos, what I did quickly there, all based on the same model, and how it will be working, and also tries to explain the JSON format. It has a schema as well. Now, can we change another column's rendering based on a column value? My understanding is no, but I can't confirm that. I haven't actually been super closely involved in this particular capability, so I can't confirm that. Is that UI done by the same guy who came up with selecting between team sites and communication sites? Very similar, yes. It's not actually the same guy, because that UI, are you a SharePoint server or a SharePoint developer, was done by a technical writer. But we'll fix that. But it's just a stupid and funny joke. So are you a server or a developer? Cool. Let's flip back on the slides. Around the ALM APIs, and then I'll do a live demo on them as well. And then we can go to the GDPR capability and solution. Good. Flipping back on the slides, and somebody needs to confirm whenever the slides are available. Loading. Why did it went to the start? Okay, let me jump to the right section. Here we go. That was the preview on that one. So let's talk about the SharePoint Solution ALM API. So this is something, which personally been super closely involved. This is technically one of my own babies, and I have really run out of time today. This is not available right now, and the solution APIs, but it's coming pretty soon available within the tenants. I can't give you the exact timeline right now, but it will be rather in weeks than months. So things are coming relatively soon available for you. The fact that we're able to use the thing already and show demos on it in a live tenants give you an indication on the level of maturity of the functionality. So SharePoint ALM APIs are essentially there to automate SharePoint add-in or app, whatever we call them, or SharePoint Framework Solution deployment and management. So you're able to install, uninstall, upgrade, add a solution. Well, let's start with that. You're able to add a solution to the app catalog. You're able to then install the solution to the site. You're able to upgrade the solution in a site. You're able to uninstall the solution in a site, and so on. And this is actual installation of the solution or adding to the site. So this has nothing to do with tenant scope deployment, which is no doubt a valid option for SharePoint Framework solutions. For add-ins, the classic challenge has always been that, hey, I have an add-in which have a client-side web parts, and I want to actually push the add-in to be available for all of my sites as part of the site provisioning, so that I will have those add-in and a client-side web parts available there. How would I do that? Answer is, well, that has not been supported in the past. There have been ways to achieve that, but there have not been a native API. This one will actually give you the API to do that. So it will essentially, you're able to do all of the needed operations to get your add-in or a SharePoint Framework solution to the site and getting it truly installed to the site. All the app install events and everything else will fire. You're able to use also app only, so there's no problems with that one. Now, this is natively provided in REST format, so the native APIs are in REST. We in the PnP side, we are actually already implemented the wrappers for the CSOM and PowerShell. So today, for the simplicity of the demo, I'm going to actually use PowerShell to make the whole thing happen. And that's just because it's super convenient and the easiest way to demonstrate to you what's actually happening. But just as well, you can use the REST APIs or CSOM in your managed code if that's what you're looking for. This is not yet available externally, so this is coming soon, like mentioned, within weeks rather than months. We'll get this one available. If you're wondering on, hey, wait a minute, so why is PnP actually doing CSOM and PowerShell, and then why is there only a REST APIs natively? Well, technically, we could have released the CSOM APIs natively from engineering as well, but the PowerShell requirement for these would actually require us to use the PnP, because PnP PowerShell is executed in the context of the site, and that's really the key difference. Implementing this kind of an operation in the SharePoint Online management shell gets complicated, because then the whole operation could only be done by a tenant administrator, and that's not a suitable and a nice solution. So basically what we wanted to do, and this might be the direction in the future for more and more capabilities, is that we'll, from an engineering side, if I put my engineering hat on, we'll concentrate on providing documented REST APIs, which people can use using REST. And then we'll use the PnP channels and community channels to provide the managed code version, as in the CSOM, and also the PowerShell wrappers for the upcoming capabilities. Cool. What is now available there? I quickly did a kind of a mapping here. This isn't completely the full list of APIs which is available, but it has the main APIs. So in the app catalog, you are able to upload an add-in to the app catalog using the add operation in the app catalog context. So you'll do _API web tenant app catalog and available apps. Not actually, that's a mistake. Damn. This is this is the reason why I should never work when you're sick. So I do apologize on that. The app catalog add operation URL is actually wrong right now. I need to fix that. But anyway, you can add a solution to the app catalog, and then you can obviously get rid of the solution from the app catalog. You need to have the right permissions to upload the solution to the app catalog, so that will be successful. In the site level, you can install, you can upgrade, and you can uninstall. And there is metadata for you to understand when there is a new version of the solution or an add-in available within the app catalog, so you're able to see that within the app metadata. So you're able to ask that, hey, SharePoint, do we have any add-ins which would be newer than the add-ins within this site context? And we're going to quickly show that one in the demo as well. So then you know that, okay, well, I can automate the upgrading of the add-in for that particular site, because it's running now 1.00 version of the solution, and there's a 2.00 solution available for the add-in. Good. Will there be gulp commands to the deployment? We'll see. So there won't be most likely native gulp commands from the Yeoman. There might be community-driven extensions for this. Does this REST APIs would be supported in SPPNP.js? They will be sooner or later. Right now, Patrick, who's leading the PnP JS work, is on parental leave, so he's having a break due to extremely valid reasons. But whenever he's back, we'll make sure that the APIs will be available there. It might be that he's coming back pretty soon, and it might be that that means that at the time when this will be available for external tenants and external usage, we'll have the SPPNP support for it natively, which would be good. Good. Let me jump on the actual demo. We can continue on the Q&A hopefully after the GDPR demo. I'm going to do quickly demos around the ALM process. And once again, I didn't update the slide. I do apologize. Like I said, I have a small fever and a flu and everything else, but I didn't want to cancel the demos. Do that. So let me jump on my screen and let me share my UIs so then we can walk through the demo which I prepared. So somebody needs to tell me again whenever the screen sharing is working.
I can see it.
Excellent. Thank you, Irving. So let's actually have a look on where we are and what's the situation within here. So let me refresh that. I should have a clean site. Yes, I do. So let's call that. This is a Office 365 group associated site. So essentially a modern group site, and what we want to do is essentially test how to get those add-ins deployed to this site. Now, how do we know what are the add-ins which are available? You can absolutely use REST for that. So I can execute, let me zoom here. REST is an option if you prefer to write your stuff in code. and absolutely works. So you can able to do _API web tenant app catalog available apps, and that will actually give you the list of all of the metadata around the apps which are available. So let me quickly get all of that and formalize that in a slightly better format. So let's create a and paste that one in, and if I save this one as a XML file, we should actually get it in a much more nicer format. Good, and now we should be able to formalize that. There we go. So now what we have here is the output from the REST call, essentially what are the add-ins which are available within a tenant. We can then get these add-ins installed to the site. Right now we can see, for example, that there's an add-in which is not installed. Installed version is equals empty. The unique ID of the add-in is over there. It's deployed. It cannot be upgraded because it's not actually installed. App catalog version being 1.00. It's not a client-side solution, so it is actually SharePoint add-in. So you can actually get that metadata from here as well. And we can see that it's the title being SharePoint app hosted add-in. We talk about, in this case, we're talking about SharePoint hosted add-ins, provider hosted add-ins, SharePoint framework solutions, anything which can be deployed from app catalog to the site. Just being super clear on that one. In this case, like mentioned, this is not a client-side solution. It is a SharePoint hosted add-in, just for the sake of it. Personally, I would never, ever use SharePoint hosted add-ins, but let's not actually even start that discussion. If in this case, we actually have a client-side solution, because that value is true, and the solution name is here web part client-side solution, and it is a version, app catalog version being 1.00. Now, if I want any of these getting installed, I can do that using PowerShell. I can do that using CSOM. In this case, like mentioned, I'm going to use PowerShell. So let me actually get the unique ID of this add-in, and I probably actually have it already in here. I could actually add that add-in to the app catalog using the PowerShell. A simple command add PnP add-in. And after that add-in, that would actually upload that to the app catalog. Get PnP app is essentially running exactly the same REST API call which we got to the XML output. So if I do get PnP app, we can actually see that we have this is pretty much the similar output in here as well. If I now need to actually install an app to end site, in this case, I'm going to use the PnP PowerShell, which is wrapping the REST calls. So I'm going to connect to that group site, just making sure that I'm actually connected. So let me actually zoom in this slightly as well. Let's be PnP on Microsoft.com. I'm just signing into of the test tenants which we're using for testing where the capability has been enabled. So now that I'm signed in to that tenant or that site, and this is really the key difference between the SharePoint Online management PowerShells and also the PnP PowerShell. Now we're in the context of site. With the native SharePoint Online management PowerShell, this is not possible. And now in the context of site, I can basically do an install call to that particular add-in which is in the app catalog. So pressing F8. Install PnP add-in on that context. The install command will be completed in a second. There we go. Now if I go back on the site, if we go to the group, if we go to the site contents, we can see that the application is getting installed, or the SharePoint app is getting installed. So all of the trust operation, everything else is getting tackled and automated. If I refresh this one, we should see that solution getting deployed in a second here. While we're waiting that to getting deployed, I'm going to actually intentionally get that other solution deployed as well, so we can test the upgrading operation. If I can find, where is my Visual Studio Code? There it is. So let me actually get the other solution deployed as well. So there's the second solution ID of that one, and let me actually get that one installed to the site as well. And that is getting queued to be installed. And there we go. Now if we go again back to the site contents, and do a refresh. There we go. There's the SharePoint hosted add-in is now already installed. There's the second add-in which is now getting installed. All of this, if we have a look on the details and all of that, it's the normal SharePoint hosted add-in. It has been already trusted. Operation has been done. There's no reason for end users to do anything at this point, and it is a version 1.00. So let's go back on the site. Oops, let's go to the site contents. There's my SharePoint hosted add-in. If I click that one, we can see that we are actually truly successfully have been installed the SharePoint hosted add-in. I can't remember when I actually used the SharePoint hosted add-in last time, which was funny. But we can actually see that there's the unique URL which is getting generated for SharePoint Online, and welcome to awesome SharePoint hosted add-ins. Absolutely awesome. So now if I go back on the group, we can also see that the second add-in got installed on the site. If that add-in or if the SharePoint framework solution would have contained feature framework definitions at this point, all of those would have been applied to the site. So all of that is getting properly activated. If it's a provider hosted add-in, the installed events are getting fired like it should be. So this is just automating what the end user could be doing by clicking from a UIs as well. Now in this case, we have this web part client-side solution. And this is version 1.00. So we can actually see that it's 1.00. Just for the sake of it, let's actually double check that our upgrading works properly. So I'm going to go out to the app for SharePoint, and then I'm going to actually upload a new version of that solution to the app catalog. So give me 1 second, I can find the solution. There we go, there's my solution. There's my second version, or version 2.0 of the same solution. We can easily see that file with the same name already exists. Replace it. And there's another validation in here. Yes, we are sure that this is fine. SharePoint framework solution is fine. The key point, what actually happened here, is that we have an app version 2.00. At this point, the web part, the actual SharePoint framework solution in a site level is still, however, in the version 1.000 level, because we haven't actually explicitly called an upgrade for this solution in here. And again, same story with SharePoint hosted add-in, provider hosted add-ins, and SharePoint framework solutions. So now if I go to the details, we can actually see that, hey, there is a newer version of the add-in, and I could actually click that one. That will start the upgrade process. But if we actually truly need to do this properly, we want to automate that. In our output, if I go again to the REST call, and this one, available apps, if I call that one, we can actually see that for the second item, let's put that one and format the output. The app catalog version is being now 2.00. Installed version in that context is 1.000, and that means that can upgrade equals true. So now you know, based on this output of the things, that hey, wait a minute, so there's a newer version available in app catalog. I can automatically upgrade that to the site, which is a classic requirement from customers as well. They want to automate and make sure that the latest solution apps versions are getting deployed on all of the sites. Now, how would we do that? We could do that obviously hitting the REST APIs, and for this particular demo, let's actually do that. So here we go. I'm going to get here. I'm going to do a refresh. Let's see. Let's see if this actually works. And I'm going to actually use the console for doing that. So let me test this one. So now let me actually get the REST upgrade call from here. And there it is. I'm going to actually go to the classic view, because my REST call in the console will be dependent on the classic view. So I'm going to go to the console. I'm going to paste in this one. I'm going to slightly modify that, and then I'm going to scroll down and show you what I'm actually doing here. So let me PnP is the tenant name. We're in the group site, and then we need to make sure that our ID is correct. So let me actually get that one from here. This one is the ID of that solution. I'm going to zoom in here in a second so you know what I'm actually doing. So what we're doing here is that we're running a console in the browser, and we're mimicking, well, we're doing the REST call. Essentially, we are doing a post operation in this case. Post operation, and you can see that the service URL is the context of the site. So we're in the site/group _ API, web app catalog, available app, get app ID, and let me actually jump there. And then we are doing the upgrade operation. So I'm essentially executing here the REST call against the site and the upgrade operation for that app or add-in. Let's actually execute that. The undefined is actually everything what we were expecting. If I come in here, the upgrade command is null. But if we get in here, we should be able to see that the upgrade is now ongoing for that add-in or that SPFX solution. And that should be right about done pretty soon as well. While we're waiting that to be done, quick note maybe on the other side, we can do uninstall PnP app identity, and I can actually get that other app away from the site, so you can actually see that that works already properly as well. So pasting that one there, doing an uninstall call for that one. Basically, again, the PnP PowerShell is using REST underneath. It's just a convenient way of testing this. If I do a refresh here, we can see that the one solution is in updating mode. That is now in removing mode. And we are able to script or automate the whole thing. What happened? What happened? Now, this one was now successfully upgraded. So we can see that that's now running a version 2.00, and the other solution is gone. What's actually kind of cool around that one, and this is by design as well, and it's good to know, will be documented as well, it didn't actually even go to the recycle bin. So you don't have if you're doing this from an API perspective and you're automating the uninstallation of the add-ins and all of that, we do not put the stuff in the recycle bin. We'll actually bypass the recycle bin by design, so there's no additional complexity on getting the solutions away from the site. So that solution actually is truly left from the site. So as you can see, not available in the site anymore. Cool. I've been talking too much again, and I do apologize. Let's actually jump on back on. Well, actually, Paolo, you probably have some slides, unless I'm completely mistaken. So feel free to take the presentation.
Okay, let me upload the slide deck. Thank you, Visa.
Cool. I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to look if there's any questions in the window as I was going through things.
Okay. Let me upload the file in the meantime. Okay. Here it is. Okay, and let me know when you see the slide deck. Slightly still loading. Okay, it's a short slide deck. Okay. Wonderful, thank you. And I will go very quickly through a few slides just to set the context, and then I will move to a demo about the GDPR Activity Hub. But one of the main focuses of this talk about the GDPR Activity Hub is also to get feedbacks from the community, so from you guys, about what we should do to improve the solution. So I will just give you a few ideas about what it is the GDPR Activity Hub and what are the GDPR requirements from an IT perspective, and then we will move to an open mic discussion if you like. So very quickly, why the GDPR compliance matters, and especially why from an IT perspective. Most likely, you know, but it's not guaranteed, that the GDPR stands for the General Data Protection Regulation, which is a new regulation from the European Union. It will go completely live next year in May 25. So every company doing business in Europe or outside Europe but managing personal data of data subjects living in Europe will have to adhere and to be compliant with the GDPR rules. And that's why it is really important to be aware of the GDPR requirements and to be ready for those requirements. It's a regulation, so it will be immediately applicable and enforceable by law in all of the member states. So we don't have to wait for the member states to do something else. It will be live on May 25th, 2018. So be prepared. And the scope is to protect personal data of individuals living in the EU. Very often I get the question about the GDPR from the perspective of someone living outside EU. So if I have a business running outside EU, am I obliged to be compliant with the GDPR? And the answer is yes. Yes, because from a GDPR perspective, if you process, hold, store, manage, or whatever else personal data of any EU resident, you will need to be compliant with GDPR. And again, if you are in UK, even if you Brexited, you still need to be compliant with GDPR, because if you manage data of European citizens, you still have to be compliant with the regulation. So, that said, very quickly, as I said, let's just make a few examples of what are the requirements from a GDPR perspective from an IT viewpoint. And just to give you an idea, for example, whenever you have to manage events like data breaches, data consent requests, so when someone living in EU, a European citizen, will give you a consent to manage his data or to process his data, you will have to keep track of all of these events, most likely in an IT service or software solution, and you will have to keep track of almost everything that will happen around the personal data of a data subject living in EU. So not only data consent, but also data consent withdrawal, if any. You will have to keep track of identity risks, of any processing activity, and of any archiving activity whenever you archive data of a EU citizen. Moreover, the EU citizens can request to your company to have access to the data that you manage for them and that you keep track of for them. So you need to collect in a kind of a log of events whenever a EU citizen will ask you to access his data or to correct his data if there are any mistakes or any correction that have to be made to the data that you manage, to export their data, because a data subject can ask you to do an export of all of his personal data just to have a reference about what you manage about him. They can even, and of course and clearly, have an objections to process their data. So if you are going to process some data for doing direct email marketing or something like that, and they make an objection, you will need to keep track of that objection, as well as if they want to be removed from your repositories, you will have to do a full erase of their data, and you will have to keep track of this request to be fully erased, fully removed from their environment. So those are just few examples to give you an idea of what we should do from an IT perspective to properly manage all of the GDPR requirements. And moreover, think about that. Let me make you a concrete example. Whenever there is a data breach, the GDPR regulation requires that you notify the supervisory authority, which could be different depending on the country in which you are, but you need to notify the authorities within 72 hours. So again, if you have an IT tool, an IT software, which helps you to keep track of events like data breach, it should be really useful to have a workflow which allows you to keep track of the timing of your notification and to be sure that you will notify the authorities within the 72 hours deadline that you have based on the GDPR requirements. So this is a very good candidate for a custom workflow process. So that said, from a PnP perspective, and more in general from a Microsoft perspective, there is a tool called GDPR Activity Hub, which is, in our opinion, a useful tool for partners that want to build their own solutions to properly manage some of the requirements that come out from the GDPR rules. So the GDPR Activity Hub, it's a reference solution as it is the PnP Partner Pack, for example, if you want to do site provisioning. In this case, with the GDPR Activity Hub, the focus is to give you a starting point to create your own solutions for be ready for GDPR, so that you can sell to your customers your own customized solutions, starting with a ready-to-go starter kit. The idea of the GDPR Activity Hub is to make it easy for you to manage the main activities and tasks related to the GDPR rules, using SharePoint Online and Office 365 as the ecosystem to build such kind of solutions, so that we can also use the hub as a kind of a showcase of the Microsoft technologies in action. In fact, we do have technologies like SharePoint Online and SharePoint Online Modern Sites. We have the SharePoint framework, and we created 4 client-side web parts that can be an example of what you can do using a client-side web part in SharePoint framework and in Modern Sites. We use the Office 365 groups and Microsoft Teams for the collaboration around the hub, as well as the remote provisioning engine of PnP, so we can automate the provisioning process of the hub. And we also use Power BI to provide some insights about the events that happen in your company whenever you use the hub to collect events and to keep track of events and happenings in your company, happenings related to GDPR rules, of course. So what are the main functionalities that the hub provides? There is a dashboard. Through the dashboard, you can see how you are performing from a GDPR perspective, and it is a Power BI dashboard. Moreover, we use SharePoint Online as the data repository for a bunch of information that we collect through a few client-side web parts that can be used as the UI for end users to request a data access or to notify a data access objection, or to collect events like data breaches, identity risks, and stuff like that. And we also provide a couple of sample workflows, which right now are based on the, let me say, kind of old school workflow manager engine. It is not really old school because it is not deprecated, but it's not based on the Microsoft Flow, because at the time of creating the GDPR Activity Hub, it was not possible to export and import programmatically a Microsoft Flow. Nowadays, you can do that, and in fact, we are planning to upgrade the solution in the near future to move toward Microsoft Flow and not using anymore the Workflow Manager engine. We provide a client-side web part through which you can see what are the tasks that you have to accomplish from an end-user perspective. So if there is any workflow that involves you, you can see what are the tasks that you have to complete. And we have a hierarchy web part, which allows you to see what is the hierarchy in your company from a GDPR perspective. So you can see who are the people in charge of all the roles defined by the GDPR. And of course, you have to provide the people and the roles, the corresponding roles, through a bunch of items in a SharePoint list, which will be then rendered through the GDPR hierarchy client-side web part. And last but not least, we provide an automated setup and provisioning process, so that you can easily install the solution in your tenant. We provide some documentation, and we give you a customizable model so that you can build your own solution on top of it, as I told you. So let me share my screen just for a while to share with all of you guys what is the UI of the GDPR Activity Hub, just in case you did not see it yet. And then I will go back to the slide deck just to collect your feedbacks and your inputs. So please let me know when you see the screen.
Loading, 3 dots.
Loading.
Got it.
Okay, cool. Okay, so this is the dashboard. This is the homepage of the GDP Activity Hub, which is based on a modern site, as I told you. And we simply use here a client-side web part provided by SharePoint Online and by Microsoft to include a Power BI report in this page. So this one is based on all of the data that we collect using the GDPR Activity Hub. As you can see, we have insights about the number of data access requests, data correct requests, exports, objections, and so on and so forth. Just to have a quick look on the performances of your business about GDPR. You have the number of data breaches, how many data breaches are still open, and how many of them have been solved, how many of them were critical, and stuff like that, so that you can properly do monitoring of all of the happenings about GDPR in your company. All the data that you can see through this dashboard, through the aggregation that you see in this dashboard, have to be inserted in the system using a UI, which is based on a couple of client-side web parts. So here you have the add request web part, which can be used to collect requests to access, to correct, to export, or to collect an objection, or to erase some personal data of a data subject. And here, as you can see, we use the Office UI Fabric controls to have a nice UI, which is usable and friendly and fully integrated with SharePoint Modern UI. And as soon as you will select what is your target request, the UI will follow you and will provide you the proper fields. And the same happens from a add event and incident a client-side web part perspective. And through this web part, you can collect information about any data breach, hopefully not that many, but if any, okay, about identity risks, data consents or withdrawals, data processings, and archiving of personal data. So right now, we give you the tool to collect data. We use a few SharePoint lists in the backend to store data. And we give you the hierarchy client-side web part to see who is the data protection officer, if any, who are the GDPR controllers and processors in your company, as well as to see what are the tasks that are assigned to you or to all of the people in your company if you are an administrator of the site, and so you can see the tasks of all of the other people involved in the GDPR activities. And through this UI, you can simply complete a task and play with the UI that you have here to set a task completed. So that's the set of capabilities that we provide. And just for your reference, this is the GitHub repository under the SharePoint organization, in which you can find all the documentation and the source code of the project, because of course it is an open source project, and indeed it is an open source project. Now, let me go back to my deck. Here we are. Okay, and as soon as we will see that the slide deck, let me know when you see it again.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, cool. What we really need now, and that's why we are talking about GDPR Activity Hub in this SIG call, is your feedback, because we would like to improve the solution, but we want to give you what you really need. So the ask for you guys is, what do you need? What would you like to see as the new capabilities for the solution? We are thinking about making it possible to automatically collect data from logs and using the REST APIs of Office 365, for example. But we are thinking also about new capabilities that are eventually needed by the community and by the partners. So if you want to use an open mic approach, I think it would be great. So feel free now to open your mic and let us know what you want to see in the product in the near future. And then we can try to invest our time to give you what you really need.
You said product, Paula.
Yeah, it's not a product. That's true. It's not a product. It's just a starter kit. You are right.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a product. So don't expect to have an SLA or something like that. It's just an open source starter kit. So you can download it, play with it at your own risk. Okay. But please let us know in the chat area, with the open mic approach or whatever else, if there is any real need that you want to share with us. Silence.
It's so complete solution, so there's no need for anything.
You don't need anything more. Oh, that's okay. So we can move to another solution.
Is there a template to create a GDPR hub site? That's actually interesting. The upcoming hub sites, whenever the hub sites are available. That's an interesting scenario.
That's an interesting scenario for sure. No, we don't have that capability right now, but that's a good input. So now we can think about it.
Yep. And obviously, there probably is a lot of people who haven't actually tested the whole thing, so it's not yet super clear on what can it do. It is also, so like mentioned, the naming might be super confusing for some. Obviously, people need to know what is a GDPR as well, but this is also an awesome reference solution for showing how to make things happen. So.
For example, one improvement we are thinking about is to improve even more the setup process. But before doing that, we want to be sure that you need the solution, because otherwise it would be a waste of time making a setup process smarter and smarter.
See how these solutions evolve. And of course, 2 Minute Papers is going to be here for you to talk about some amazing upcoming.
Oh, I hear a very far voice. Did you get the...
No, I didn't.
Can you please repeat?
On the John Coates has a question: does the GDPR solution complement or replace Security and Compliance Center? So the Security and Compliance Center is an official product and a service in Office 365. This is an open source community-driven solution sample around how to collect possible GDPR issues. It's not the Compliance Center is the actual thing, and this is not going to replace that. This is a complementary thing, a community-driven solution, reference solution, what people can use. So, Absolutely. Do we have a plans to enhance Security and Compliance Center to support GDPR? I don't know. We're wrong people to speculate on that, unfortunately.
Okay.
So this may be an Euro thing today. No, and that's an interesting point from Ralph. Yes, so people think that GDPR is only for European customers and European companies. It actually isn't. Exactly. EU will sue every single US company as well if they do any business with any European people. That's the thing. If you have any European employees, this actually has an impact for you, which might be scary, and I think nobody actually knows what it means in practice whenever they start applying that policy. Does it only support Office 365 or does it support SharePoint on-prem options as well? Right now it's only Office 365, mainly also because it's using SharePoint framework and modern sites. The modern sites are not yet on the premises.
Yes, and we also use Power BI in the online Power BI, so we have a requirement of Office 365 of the cloud for that one as well. So no, right now it doesn't work on-prem.
Looks like most of the North American companies to implement. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, all over the world. If you manage personal data of EU citizens, you have to be compliant. So.
And Sebastian, no worries. Okay. And good comment from Ralph. That's one of the key objectives of the solution as well. So sure, we'll give you a generic solution for GDPR issue tracking, but that's not actually the main purpose of the solution. It also shows how to use these tools in a real life user business case. That's the main purpose. Cool. I think we actually ran out of time.
Yeah. And if you have any feedback, feel free to send us your feedbacks offline using the technical communities or whatever social channel you like, but please let us know if you have any feedback.
Yes. Yes, and I think that's it then for this week's community call. So thank you everybody for joining. Please keep the feedback coming and give us feedback, give us input on the things what we do. If something isn't working, let us know. You can always, if you run into issues within the SharePoint Online especially, please use, for example, the SharePoint Dev Docs issue list. We'll loop in the right people trying to help you on your things. If you have suggestions, guidance, documentation, what is missing, let us know. On the PnP stuff, let us know, and we'll get there. And sorry for sounding slightly sick, but I'll definitely get better for the next week. Typically these are done for me within 1 or 2 days. But thank you everybody, and we'll be absolutely in touch. Cheers. Bye bye.